Hello and welcome back to Devon Pond Plants, where the sun always shines, and here we are on day 3 of how to build a garden pond with wildlife friendly features. And if you've watched the last couple of videos, you will have seen us first of all excavate a trench where the concrete was placed in order to put the edging bricks on when we're finished, and then from further shelves were concreted in so that we've got a nice hard corner here and edge, so that when we're climbing in and out of the pond we're not disturbing all the corner of the shelf and making it difficult to place baskets afterwards. And if you look on the drawing behind me, you will see that this is starting to resemble now the plan that we made in the first place. One fairly useful tip is that if you're building a pond like this, it's a good idea to do the excavation at a time very close to when you put the liner in, because the longer that the hole is empty without anything in it, the more bits and pieces will keep dropping off the sides and ending in the bottom, and more you will tend to lose the profile of the pond with rain washing it off, and in hot dry weather little bits and pieces will keep popping off the surface all over the place. So try to do your excavation fairly soon before you're going to put the liner on, and preferably avoid any dogs lying in there in the way, but he seems perfectly happy there, so we won't disturb him for a minute. Right, I'm just going to remove this excess piece of concrete here, a little bit of splurge from the overspill from the concrete in the shelf here, because it's going to make any baskets tip up out of the way, and just get that out of the way. Okay, that's done, and now we're going to have a final check over to pick up any loose bits of stone that we've lost or missed before. As I say, they'll keep on appearing on a dry, hot, sunny day like this. They keep on popping off the bank, so we'll just do a quick pick over now and get the underlay in. Perfect, thank you, Ruth. Now a quick word about the underlay and liner itself. This is sold as a premium underlay, so it's a little bit thicker than some, but it does seem pretty thin to me, to be honest with you, but it's nice and tough and strong, and it will take off any sharp edges and so on. An underlay normally is sold in 2-metre wide rolls, so you will end up with several pieces to put across your pond. Just make sure that they're overlapped, and that where you do overlap them, that the overlap is downwards, so the piece underneath goes underneath the one on the top, and it stops any bits and pieces dropping down the overlap that way. And then the liner which we will be using is EPDM rubber. Now this is basically the top quality liner made by Firestone, and it's a rubber mix. It comes in 0.75 and 1mm thick options, and here we've gone for the heavy option, mainly because we have a piece we want to use. There's no reason, if you're with a young family and you're in a house that you don't expect to be in for very long, and you're moving into a new garden, you want to put a little pond, there's no reason not to use the cheaper liners. They're all guaranteed for 10, 15, 20 years, and perfectly honest with you, they'll probably be absolutely fine. But the bigger the project is and the more money is being invested in it, the more I'd be inclined to use a heavier quality, more premium liner. They're all extremely good these days. Just a warning, don't use builder's plastic. It's not designed for the job, and even the UV sterilised type will go brittle and crack and split in no time at all. So any of the PVC, polypropylene, rubber type liners should do you for a small garden pond. So Ruth's now going to give me a hand to neatly unroll this underlay and get it across the pond without knocking any bits and pieces in while we're doing it. And we're going to start with this middle section so that the outer sections overlap downwards and stops any bits and pieces going in underneath the overlaps. So it's already weighted on this side, so we basically, if you can come in this side and take that side of it, and I'll do this side. Okay, we're all good. We have plenty of overlap on 3 sides. All the excess is on the 4th side, and we won't trim any of that off until after the edging strip has been laid. It'll just be folded neatly out of the way for the time being. But that bit will be quite useful when we come to place the big log in this corner and the beech generally. If there's anything very heavy, we can use a couple of bits of folded underlay left over to go underneath any sharp or heavy items. Now, the liner that we have to line this pond is actually an offcut from a full roll where we use some for another project, and we have a 6 metre square left over, roughly. And this pond won't require 6 by 6 metres. So again, we're going to start with just enough on one side, unroll it this way, and that way we'll end up with a useful size of offcut on one side, rather than just having an equal sized overlap all the way round and ending up with a ring of 1 metre all the way round, which would be totally useless afterwards. We should end up with a 6 metre by 2 metre offcut, which might be quite useful in the future for lining ponds or tanks or what have you. So that's what we're going to do now. We're going to carry that to one side, unroll it and start to position it. Now, you do have to be careful, obviously, not to disturb what you've done already. Just work carefully and slowly and methodically, and once we get it roughly in place, we'll start putting some water in to help to pull it down into all the corners and crevices and shapes, pleating it carefully as we go. So now it needs to come right over the top. Well, it goes without saying that the more complicated the shape of the pond is and the more different levels you've got, the more folds and pleating you're going to have to deal with. So that's one thing to bear in mind in the very early stages of planning your pond, is not to create too many different depths and shapes. Obviously a square pond is probably a little bit more easy than a round pond, but not very much more so. It's really the number of shelves that makes the difference, because all the pleats will tend to end up in the corners. And then when you come to lay the edging bricks, they're obviously in places going to be on top of pleated pieces of liner, and therefore, you know, creating a very deep bed of mortar to put the bricks on in the corners. But we're almost there now in terms of getting the liner in its approximate place. There's plenty to this side to act as an excess. All the excess main material is on that side and on that end. So now really it's just a question of tidying up these pleats as much as we're able to. Once the sun's got on it, it'll make it warmer and more pliable and easier to fiddle with. And then once we've done that, we'll start filling with water slowly to enable a water pressure to keep pushing it into all the shapes and corners, and just basically keep going round and round and round, making sure all the time that you haven't got a piece of liner pulling into the pond. For example, here, this is bridging this corner here so that there's nothing behind the liner there. That liner is going to have to go right into that corner, and as it does so, this edge is coming in towards the pond, and we may get to the dangerous situation where we have insufficient liner there to turn up behind the back of the block. We've barely got enough there now. So what we're going to have to do is move the entire liner along, maybe 15-20 centimetres, to make sure that we've got plenty of excess that end, and make sure that that's got enough to go into there. So we'll do that now, and then start all over again. So now, having done that, I now have ample material at this end. Okay, I'm now using the water pressure to push the liner into all of the corners and folds, and I'm just going to keep going around and around, pleating it carefully to try and get lots of small pleats rather than a few really big ones if I possibly can. And it's surprising, it's only a few centimetres of water in here, but that will grab the liner completely, so there'll be no further ability to move the whole liner one way or the other. So before you start this stage, make sure you've still got plenty of overlap all the way round, and then you're good to go. This water will be drained out again after I've finished laying mortar and bricks all the way around the edges, because I'll probably drop a bit of mortar in there and bits and pieces, so I'll pump this out and refill it when we come to plant, and it's probably a good time to talk about water in general. I get a lot of inquiries with people saying, how should I fill my pond? Is it okay to use tap water? Should I wait for rainwater to fill it up? And it's really not an easy question to answer, because it does vary a lot across the country. Water, generally speaking, as far as plants is concerned, is fine wherever you are. Tap water can contain high levels of nitrates and phosphates, which will encourage algal blooms in the pond, but you're probably likely to get that anyway, even if you were to use distilled water. So I think using a hose is perfectly fine, especially in small ponds. When you get to very large ponds, of course, it's a different matter. And you have to bear in mind that in the UK, where we are here, the average rainfall is around about 1 metre a year. So if you have a large natural swimming pond that's maybe 2 metres deep at the deepest, and a large area, could take over a year to fill if you wait for it to fill from rainwater naturally. And the problem then is that there's static standing water in the pond for a long period of time, which is not planted, and it's got nothing else growing in it, and what will tend to happen is you'll get a lot of algae start to grow. And it means that when you do come to having the pond full and you're ready to plant, it's already infested with algae everywhere. So that's not a terribly good thing, but with a very large pond there's often no alternative. So I'm afraid I can't offer you any perfect solutions. There are various chemicals you can buy in all sorts of aquatic shops that will claim to treat the water and prevent this or prevent that. I don't like using any of them personally. I'm sure that some of them may have some effect, but I'm afraid I can't give you any solid advice on that. As you can see now, the pond is nearly full up, and the water pressure has pushed all the liner down into all the folds and creases, and so there's very little more movement possible now with the liner. That's pretty much where it's going to end up. So what I'm going to do next is I'm just going to cut off the worst of the excess of the liner, because in this case there's a good sized offcut that can be used. If I leave it on with all the wheelbarrows coming and going and people tramping about, it's likely to get damaged. So I want to cut it off, but I don't want to cut it off too short, because I still have to allow for the liner to come up behind these blocks and give myself a little bit of wiggle room in case any of these folds need redistributing or whatever. So I'm going to give myself about 30 centimetres excess on this side, and that should be more than enough. I'll only end up cutting it off anyway, I know I will, but at least it'll only be 30 centimetres wasted and not the whole 2 metre length that we have here. So I'll just whip through and do that now. There we go. All that can be folded up neatly in a minute. Well, I'm going to leave this now, not least because it's 6:30 and it's about time when I had something to eat. But at least you can see that the water level is showing that the edges are perfectly level all the way around. The final finished water level will be something like 6 or 8 centimetres higher than it is now, after these bricks have been laid around the outside, and the pond has been finished. I've been barrowing in some of the pebbles for the beach over there, and a couple of big feature rocks which will actually be shuffled in, so they're just below the surface. So not too much more to do down there. We still have a large decorative piece of wood to set in the corner, but because we want that to hang over the edge of the bricks, I'm going to lay the bricks first before moving that into position. So jobs are good and so far, and see you next time.